reminder, every episode of this podcast premieres live on AMP. So download the app, subscribe to me at Richard Sherman to tune in to all of our shows live. Welcome back to the Richard Sherman Podcast. Mitchell, the draft.
We finally get to talk about it, Rich. This has always been my favorite time of year. I'm growing up a Detroit Lions fan. This is all we had to root for, man. There were no Super Bowls. There were no playoff games. This is the only thing we had to look forward to, Richard. I'm hyped. I know you've got to be a little hyped, too. Tell me what you think about this year's draft class, Rich.
I remember a time the Detroit Lions picked like 3 receivers, like back to back to back. It was like Roy Williams, freaking Jason Williams?
We had them all. We had Mike Williams. Charles Rogers. Don't forget the fellow Spartan, man. Those were the Fire Millen years, man. Those were the Fire Millen years. I think we're still seeing some signs in Ford Field down there. But, Rich, we know your fans, we know your followers love you, some Seattle Seahawks. I want to start with Seattle. They own 2 first-round picks. They're fresh off a great offseason, free agent additions, building in the trenches, Drummond Jones, Jaron Reed's back, Devin Bush. You get your boy Bobby Wagner back. This team, all of a sudden, they had one glaring deficit, and that was their run defense. They seem to have addressed it. I want to start with their free agent additions. What do you think of Seattle Seahawks offseason thus far?
I think it's been great. I think Bobby Wagner coming back, getting an all-pro middle linebacker back that shouldn't have left in the first place, a leader of your defense back shouldn't have left in the first place, is going to be just phenomenal. It's going to be tremendous for the team. It's going to be tremendous for their poise down the stretch of big games. There's no way to measure his impact on the field and off the field. They addressed the middle of that defense. Of course, I think they're still going to bring back Bruce Irvin. I think they still expect big things out of Mafe and the other pass rushers they got, but they have to address it in the draft. Offensively, I think they're fine. They got your boy K9 in the backfield. They got 2 really reliable, good tackles, Abe Lucas and Charles Cross. I think they believe in both of those guys. They got 2 good receivers on the outside, 2 Pro Bowlers. They got Geno. I think the interior offensive line is a question mark. I think Mike Jackson, opposite of Tariq Woolen, is going to be fine. Jamal Adams is on his way back on the mend, so he should be back in time for the season. So they get reinforcements at that position. And I still think they got to go defense in this number 5 pick. I think they have to go defense. Whether it's Jalen Carter, can you have too many interior D linemen that are great? No, you can't. Or if Will Anderson somehow slips through the cracks, slips past Arizona, I think he's your pick. You got a future great pass rusher in this league, a future 10, 12 sack guy. Tyree Wilson, I've heard rumors about him being there at that pick. I'd rather them trade back a little bit and get him. I don't think he's the number 5 pick in the draft. And with their second pick, I think they got to go defense again. Whether it's corner. I don't think Devin Witherspoon will be there. I don't think Christian Gonzalez will be there. Hodges might be there. Keely Ringo should still be there. But if they want to go that direction, or if they want to go pass rush again, go pass rush twice. You can never have enough of them because that's such a glaring weakness for them.
Well, I just remember the Legion of Boom days. You guys were obviously locked and loaded in the secondary, but let's not forget about what you guys had in the front 4. I mean, you guys had a rotation where it was just persistent. Get after the quarterback. And whether you go DB or you go D-line, I don't think you can go wrong, Rich. I'm with you there. It's, this team, to me, it's funny because you look at this point last season. They traded Russell Wilson. We thought they were headed for a rebuild. Everyone was abandoning the Seattle Seahawks ship. And now all of a sudden, Pete Carroll has leveled this thing out, and they're back on the rise. This team, I truly believe under Geno, the sky's the limit. And if they put together, Rich, another draft class like they had last year, even if it's 75% of the draft class they had last year, this team could do some serious damage in the NFC West and in the NFC as a whole. But Richard, there are huge question marks after Geno Smith's contract's over. Obviously, he's not a young buck anymore. I know he had played his
You
ass
don't
off.
reach, Mitchell. You don't reach. You don't reach early. You need an impact player right now. You want to go to the playoffs again. You want to make that kind of impact again. You don't reach in the draft.
Well, Richard, we've seen other teams in similar situations. I don't want to say that Patrick Mahomes grows on trees, but you look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the way they built this. They were a playoff team under Alex Smith. They were, very, very competitive, winning a ton of games, but I think their management realized there's a ceiling to this. Patrick Mahomes comes in and elevates that ceiling. They got a huge skyscraper growing over there in Kansas City, man.
There's no ceiling elevators in this draft, Mitchell. I don't believe there are. I feel like every year they hype these quarterbacks up because you have to. But Patrick Mahomes is once in a generation. I mean, I guess Aaron Rodgers also, but those guys aren't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks. Burrows was the last top 5 pick that's doing anything that's relevant. I guess Herbert's doing fine, but I feel like people get so enamored with these quarterbacks and like, man, you got to take a quarterback, man. He's going to be a difference maker. These guys are not Patrick Mahomes. There's nobody at 5 that's Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes went 12. Like, he didn't go top 5. If they would have known he was Patrick Mahomes, he would have went 0. They would have traded everything they could. Every team would have. But guess what? You don't know. So then you just pick these quarterbacks like they're building Richardson up. Now he went from not even a first-round pick to the number 1 pick. Will Levis, whatever his name is. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. The tape doesn't. They're not winners. You don't win games. Now Bryce Young, winner. C.J. Stroud, winner. But Bryce Young, very undersized. He's going to have limitations. Now, has that been a problem for him in college? It has not. He's overcome that. He's been fine. Have there been quarterbacks to overcome size in the National Football League? There have. But you look at the quarterbacks that are special in this league that have had a lot of success. There aren't a lot of top 5 picks that you're looking at and you're saying, hey, man, that guy was a guy. Cam Newton was great. Matt Ryan, those guys won MVPs. You got to give them their credit. But so has Lamar Jackson. Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, 6th-round pick. Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, 24th pick. So let's not get so enamored with these guys in the top 5. Like, they're going to come in and light the league on fire because you're setting them up for failure. Now, hopefully they do. Hopefully those guys come in and just light it up, and it's crazy. But the expectation is they won't.
Well, you're talking about the quarterbacks. I want you to put yourself in the GM seat for the Carolina Panthers, picking number 1 overall. Obviously, I'd like to assume they're going to be taking a quarterback. Who would you take if you're forced to pick one of these guys? Who do you think is the most capable of elevating your franchise?
I think C.J. Stroud's the guy I would pick. I hear they're in love with Bryce Young, but I think size is always an issue for me. I think C.J. Stroud has played in a lot of big games. I think Bryce Young has played in a lot of big games, but I think C.J. Stroud can come in and make an immediate impact, be able to lead a team, be able to command a team. He's really accurate. He has a fantastic deep ball. I don't think you can go wrong with either guy, but I just hate the expectations that they're putting on these kids because you're sitting here expecting these kids to take you to the promised land. And these teams aren't built to go to the promised land. Now, Carolina got a great coaching staff, and they're putting some pieces in place where I think people might want to start paying a little bit closer attention because they should be a playoff team with that staff and the players that they got because, my goodness, they got a good dang staff. They got a lot of pros, and they got a lot of vets that can play the game. But I'm one of those pessimistic draft guys. I'm not an optimistic draft guy. I'm not sitting there like, man, these guys are about to light it on fire because what is the percentage of first-round quarterbacks that make a Super Bowl or that have a huge impact? They're a handful. There was 1 picked last year, but there's usually 3 to 4 picked every year, and rarely are they the guys people think they are.
And we see it time after time after time. Each year, there's always an underwear warrior, for lack of a better term. These guys that come into the combine and absolutely light the world on fire. We saw it this year with Anthony Richardson. The talk of the town last year was Malik Willis. I don't believe he ran at the combine, but everyone saw his game tape. Here he is, lighting the world on fire at Liberty. Like, he couldn't make it at Clemson. goes to Liberty, is a human highlight reel. Everyone's enamored with this guy. You see him going top fives in mock drafts. Everyone's enamored except for the GMs. My question to you, Rich, is obviously Anthony Richardson has gotten a ton of hype for his athleticism, but his production at the college level is eye-opening. Do you think this guy honestly has potential to be a solid QB, or does he have bust written all over him?
I mean, I'm not going to say anybody's a bust, because if you would have said, coming out of college, what would I've been? Would I've had the career I've had? Nobody would have said it. I don't know if I ever would have said it. But at the end of the day, I don't like the combine. I don't like the pre-draft process. I wish the draft was in February. Ignore all the fluff. Get the kids based off the tape. The tape talks. The tape says it. Whether he can run a 40 and 4.5, 4.3, 4.2, what does the tape say? Can he play the game? A corner running 4.5 can be an all-pro and stop receivers running 4.3. It's proven. A corner running 4.3 can get beat by 10 yards on the go route. It's been proven. You can have pass rushers who got 18 sacks in college that can't get 3 over 4 years in the league. Like, you gotta study the tape and really look at the competition. That's why so many SEC guys go. Because people say, hey, that's an SEC tackle. That's an SEC D lineman. Those are NFL talents. Now, let's see them go against each other. Are they having the same level of success? They aren't. They aren't having success against these guys, but they're having success against Valdosta State. It's like, yeah, that's not the same. And so I think it's about the tape. I don't like that the draft is in April. You sit here and put all this fluff and all this nonsense in front of people. I guess the NFL has to sell it. They sell all these products and make a lot of money, so it makes sense for them. But if the draft was in February, I'd be really happy because teams would get better players and they wouldn't get confused and enamored and, all the smoke and mirrors or all the nonsense. What does his tape look like? Is he a winner? Can he get the job done? Usually it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's guys like John Ross that are going top 10 strictly because of their 40 time. And as a GM, the competent ones look at the tape. Richard, you talked about a guy that you want the Seattle Seahawks to potentially target at 5. Jalen Carter out of Georgia. Obviously, this guy going in to this year was viewed at 1A or 1B. Him and Will Anderson, top dogs on defense. Character is the question with Jalen. He has a serious issue. Let's not make light of it. The situation he went through in January after they won the national title game. Resulting in speeding and an unfortunate death of a couple folks on his team, and obviously that leaves him in a serious tough situation mentally. How much of a concern would it be for you to draft him as a GM? Would you have any worries?
Yeah, you got a lot of worries. He was the consensus number 1 pick for majority of the year, and when you know that, Mitchell. I mean, not saying you got to wrap your life in saran wrap or bubble wrap, but you got to be close. Like, if you racing on the opposite side of traffic at 100 miles an hour and you knew you were the number 1 pick, Mitchell, they need to study your brain because that is what insanity looks like. And so 100% there are question marks. But this is a National Football League, Mitchell, and I'm sorry if I seem crazy because they will overlook it. If the man can play the game, and the man can play the game. So there will need to be an incredible structure around this young man. You cannot let him just, hey, he's going to be a pro and leave him to his own vices. You can't. You got to structure. Hey, it may be somebody living right next to him. You may have to have somebody live with him. Hey, you got meetings. Wake up, get to meetings. Like, babysit this kid because it's insane to think a kid with the understanding, I'm going number 1 would make those decisions, especially you just won a national championship. Everything in your life is going great. Now, if things were going bad, maybe a tragic incident, somebody passed away unexpectedly, mental process, a lot of things on your mind, a lot of things. There's certain things you would understand about that situation. Hey, he's going through a hard time. Everybody's been through a hard time. Your brain isn't functioning totally correct when you're going. He was in awesome times. These were the best of times. And he's making decisions like that. So that leaves a lot of questions. So I'm speaking more about the talent of the human being, a guy who should have gone number 1. If people were saying he's falling out of the top 10. I mean, if he falls out of the top 10, it'll say more about how far the league has come, because that's not always been this league's MO of, hey, guy's character is questionable, but his play is outstanding. They always have those charts like, hey, does the talent outweigh the concern? Which one? Are you willing to risk your job on it? Which GM is willing to put their stamp on it and change their franchise? And then his pro day was disappointing. Like, you can't have all these question marks and then have a pro day like that. Like, were you tired? You out of shape? Not you.
Yeah. I mean, it's the biggest meeting of his life, right? I mean, this is the biggest job interview of his life. And that was concerning. But Richard, we've seen it year after year. I seen it like Lyle Collins goes undrafted. Laramie Tunzel slips 12, 13 spots, was considered a top 3 pick just because a gas mask weed bong came out which is 5 minutes before the draft.
A crazy setup. Now he's the highest paid tackle in all of football multiple times over and over, because he should have been the number 1 tackle that year. But
but to your point, Rich, I mean, talent. Coaches, teams look at talent, and obviously Jalen Carter has talent. So, Rich, let's flip it a little bit, because you got other team of interest, the 49ers. They did what they could this offseason. They added Javon Hargrave, which was an impressive signing. Boosting already. This is a generational defensive line they have right here. And then you just, insert Javon Hargrave. With the bigger question looming over this team, obviously they're going to have an elite top 3 defense, probably the number 1 overall defense again, but it's at the quarterback position. The rumors are swirling about Trey Lance, and this is entering year 3. I was listening today. I think he's thrown a total of 300 passes since high school. And that includes college and the pros. 300 passes. Let me ask you, Rich, is it too soon to give up on this guy, or is John Lynch going to move on from him?
They're not going to move on from him, especially right now. I mean, Brock Purdy's availability is, at least for the beginning of the season, is unknown. So I don't think they're going to go out there and say, hey, we're going with Sam Darnold as our starting quarterback going forward. At this point, I don't see them doing that. And now, who knows? Sam Darnold may be the perfect scheme, perfect system. Brian Greasy, everything works in his favor, and Kyle Shanahan is a match made in heaven. We've seen that. We've seen that happen where Kyle has a guy that does the things that he needs to do well. He processes well, and they have a year. Sam Darnold down the stretch last 7-8 games of the season, played phenomenal. And deserves a ton of credit. So, but to give up on Trey Lance this early, I don't see it happening. And what people don't realize is with the 49ers not having a second-round pick, the amount of salary that they're using on this draft class is substantially lower than say the Seattle Seahawks or the other teams that have multiple first-round picks. They're going to be spending close to $10 million on a draft class, when San Francisco, may spend $1 million, $2 million on a draft class. And I mean, with the way they're about to have to pay Bosa, with a portion of the team, they need to save all the money they can. So I think Javon Hargrave is going to, my goodness, if he has a year anywhere near the year he had last year for this team, then Bosa is going to have an even better year than he had last year. Eric Armstead's going to have an even better year, because they're going to have to double team Javon Hargrave. My goodness, an embarrassment of riches. And then they got to continue to develop Drake Jackson. And in the back end, they're going to continue to get better. Charvarius Ward is going to continue to get better. Diamador Lenore showed up in the playoffs and gave them the confidence that they did not re-sign E-Man, but he signed to your Detroit Lions. It's going to be a great pickup. And the secondary, you talk about bringing Gibson back on a minimum deal. Tyler Noah Hufanga is a big-time player, so they don't have a lot of holes to draft in the first place. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a kicker or a punter or something of that nature. Interior offensive line and the centers, is something they can probably go with, trying to find one in the second round, third round. But in terms of giving up on Trey Lance, I don't see that happening. I see him, battling in training camp with Sam Darnold, and if they don't feel confident in him, they'll start Sam Darnold. I mean, that's a realistic possibility.
Well, the reason they were able to get here, Rich, is they traded a lot of their draft picks. I mean, they traded a number of first-round picks for Trey Lance. They just dealt for Christian McCaffrey. Now they have an embarrassment of riches. This team is absolutely locked and loaded. The only real true question is going to be who starts at QB. But we saw the LA Rams take a similar approach. It resulted in a Super Bowl. F them picks. It got them a Super Bowl. No one's going to question that. Super Bowl is the almighty, right? But look at them now. What do the San Francisco 49ers have to do to prevent being in the same situation that the LA Rams are in a couple, 3-4 years from now?
They got to trust. They got to get good front office management because they're going to have to pay Bosa and they're going to have to say goodbye to people soon. This is going to probably be the last year of this team being the way it is. There's a lot of heavy salaries coming up. And, Fred Warner makes a lot of money. Eric makes a lot of money. Bosa's about to make a lot of money. Deebo Samuel makes a lot of money. Christian McCaffrey makes a lot of money. When you have that many guys making a lot of money, Charvarius Ward makes a lot of money. Talanoa Hufanga will make a lot of money. And so that's when, good teams, good development, good drafting makes it hard decisions. They've done themselves a favor by signing Greenlaw early. Before he got market value. They got him really early. They got him to a nice, fair deal. So they got him under contract. But if they can do more deals like that, I think they'll be fine. But right now, they don't have a deal on Bosa. They're not getting a discount on Bosa. I mean, if it's under 30, you got me. You call me bamboozled, fruzzled. If it's under $30 million. But I think this is the year they have to do something. If I was a GM, I'd be on that same wavelength. I mean, first round picks. Sauce Gardner was a first round pick that made an immediate impact to make a generational player. But the hit or miss on first round picks, I think it's 20-25% that they're a Pro Bowl, All Pro player over the last 2 decades. So I would go second, third round. I'd get rid of first rounders for established veterans. Second, third round, I'd draft and try to draft well in the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds. San Francisco has done that, but they don't have a lot of holes, Mitchell.
They have very few holes. Like we said, that quarterback position seems to be the only question mark. Richard, I want to talk about a former 49er coach, DeMeco Ryans. The Houston Texans have been making some noise this offseason. They seem to kind of control that pivot point of the draft. Pick number 1 we know is going QB. But you know DeMeco well enough. This team, they got your Stanford boy, Davis Mills, is that his name? Running QB. Do you take quarterback at 2 if you are the Texans, or are you going with Will Anderson, the edge rusher, to try to set the tone defensively?
It just depends on your plan. Obviously, they freaking bungled the plan. All they had to do was not win games, and they decided, hey, at the wrong possible time, we're going to win. What? Like, you had the number 1 pick all season and then decided.
At least they got momentum going into the offseason, Rich, right? You end on a win.
Right. I guess. I mean, 1-0 in 2023. Congratulations. My goodness. But when that draft comes and they sitting there without the quarterback they wanted, they're going to be sitting there like 1-1, 2023. Like, my goodness. But I think they go defense. I mean, they got a lot of holes on defense. You got a lot of young playmakers. Obviously they got Stingley last year. I think that's the direction you should go. Quarterback, I mean, as one guy, you put him behind that offensive line who's, I don't know. They got Laramie Tunsil and a lot of people I can't name. And so I think Justin Britt's the center, and I'm not sure outside of that. And so I think if you draft a quarterback, is this the offensive line you want him behind? Is this how you want to start his career? Do you have the playmakers to around him for him to have any level of success and have confidence? I don't think you do. And so what you can do is build him up a defense that's ready to go. You got a corner, you got a safety in Petrie, and I think you got the front, and you can add to that. You add a Will Anderson, or you add a Jalen Carter, or you trade back, get more picks, maybe get a player. Maybe you get a veteran offensive guard or something. You get a player that can come help you right now. But I don't think you take a quarterback at 2.
If they wanted to go that route, they could always target Hendon Hooker in the second round. I know he's a little bit higher up there in age, but I mean, the guy was lethal with Tennessee, and there are other options. But Richard, I'm curious to know: are there any prospects outside of the top five? The big name guys that truly stand out to you that you would take a shot at if you were a GM? Later in the first round.
Well, I think Zay Flowers is going to be interesting. I think he's an NFL player, and he's going to be a playmaker. Barry Sutton, dynamic. I think the corners in this draft I can't wait to see him. Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Hodges, Keely Ringo. I think it's going to be really cool to see these corners and where they go and how they impact. Smith and Jigba from Ohio State, seeing how his game translates in the National Football League. There's a couple tackles. The tackle from Ohio State, usually you see a couple tackles in the top 5 and the top 10, and the fact that they're projected 15, 16 is kind of weird. I don't know what about their game that says they're not, complete. But usually you got at least 1 or 2 tackles in the top 10. That's weird that they're not, and maybe they will be. There's just not in the projections right now. But I don't see a corner going top 5 in this draft, but Seattle's known to surprise you.
Yeah, no question. Richard, this concludes our draft coverage, little recap of the NFL offseason. We're going to take a little breather for the next month here, but we're going to be right back with you guys here. I'll let you sign off here, Rich.
Well, I appreciate you guys joining us again. You know what time and the place. We'll be back. It's going to be a little bit of quiet, dead period for us, but when we come back, we'll be back with a vengeance with all the info you need. Stick with us.